Creating the Perfect Company from the organizational experts, Multiview Incorporated. This content is based on MBI's work with over 1,300 organizations, extracting 989 data elements with 922 cross-calculations over 27 years on a monthly basis, and then systematizing the operational success patterns of the 90th percentile. Our intent is to get beyond the brag and the boast, and simply share insights from our experience without manipulation or coercion to sell anything, except helpful ideas. These messages range from intimate recordings from the Awakened Forest to concerts, national conferences, and broadcasts.
Here we are on the mountain, continuing our discussion, our deep dive into compensation. It's going to be an exciting week. We've got CEOs and leaders coming from all across the country, and we'll be spending a few days training them in the methods of Multiview and the model. And then we have Green Berets coming in because there's a lot of things they would like to do, and they've recognized that there's all kinds of Multiview concepts, including compensation, that can be deployed. So we're excited about that. So let us continue. And let me pick up where really we left off last time. And that's that the compensation system builds confidence. And that's one of the greatest attributes of a well-designed, smart comp system, is that it actually builds confidence, because confidence is built through attainment, is through success and real achievement. And the compensation system, of course, gives feedback immediately whether the results are being realized or whether we're not getting there. But again, it's dynamic feedback of what's going on, and therefore it builds confidence in people, and you want a strong workforce. And you could almost say it like this: confident people render confident service. Now, one of the aspects of Multiview, from its inception, is we are just all about customer service. It's in our DNA. And I don't know quite where this comes from. It comes from me, obviously, because I insist upon absolute customer delight and just utter consideration, just meticulous consideration of really the client or customer experience. And it's probably from some latent thing in my past, I don't know. All I know is that I want to please people. I want people to be happy with our services. When I came into this compensation company early on, well, they were hemorrhaging clients. And I stopped it cold just by calling up all the clients, getting into a relationship with them. They thought, man, this Reed character we can trust, and then following through. And I just really carried those ideas forward of always doing a good job in what you're doing, managing people's expectations. And maybe it's just because I've been let down so many times, and we all know we've been let down by all these companies that proclaim to have great service. I mean, you call telephone companies, and they are crappy. You get put on hold. You're transferred around. You just have these incredibly bad experiences. And so customer service, or customer delight, as we like to say at Multiview, is just paramount. And you can build a great business. And as we talked about the comp system last time, that no matter what you're doing, whether you're making, again, shoes, whether you're making computers, microwaves, exercise equipment, whatever, that you can bring almost a spirituality or meaning and purpose, which is the larger payoff, again, in a comp system, just through customer delight and training people to be sensitive, to be considerate, to elevate their levels of consciousness, in fact. Again, that is the biggest payoff of a well-designed system, because all of us, I think, in our heart would like to be helpful Some you could say, I doubt that, Andrew. Look at some of these people have been incarcerated. Well, that's true. The light may not be very bright there, but I think that it exists. So this idea of developing people and developing their confidence. And the one thing that you know in customer service or bringing up customer delight is that confident people render confident service. And unconfident people render unconfident service. Because you cannot give what you do not have. If a person wants to get $1 million from somebody, don't ask somebody that only has $100 in the bank account. They can't give it. It's not possible. And that's true regarding confidence. And of course, confidence comes from practice, successful practice, mind you, because if you had repeated failure, that does not bolster your confidence in what you're doing. But confidence is such a big aspect of building up in this strong workforce, and your comp system does this. And the thing about the comp system is you can use it in your people selection process especially, in that you bring them in, and we have this all step by step for organizations that introduce, again, some type of creative compensation system or performance type system that you're going to get a fairly minor base, and that the larger portion of your compensation is going to come from your actual results or performance. And right there, you start to smoke out the people who lack confidence, because you basically say, hey, I've got to have people that are going to bet on themselves, on their own abilities, and bet on the company too. And that comes out almost immediately. So people go through all kinds of gyrations with these silly HR and interview processes and all that. Again, we've got this orchestrated for any organization. And you could solve the whole thing right there just by confronting them with the comp system. And are you willing to bet on yourself and this organization? So by tying the comp system to performance and results, you find out immediately whether they're willing to bet on themselves. So the comp system is really revealing. And what it's really showing you is accountability. Are you going to own your life? Are you going to own your work? Or are we going to play the victim game and live in a world of excuse because we can't get the results or the performance that we want? And you also get committed people, people that believe in the company, right? Just like the greatest salespeople, they believe in the company. And of course, they have to have incredible product knowledge. You know, it's not just fluff and floaty stuff. No, they need to know all about your System 7, your people development processes, the comp system, why it works. They're master teachers because marketing is teaching. I also use the compensation to get rid of people. And it's a great system for that. Obviously, once you get it going, it maintains health because you have strong, confident people that believe in the organization, in their abilities and all that. But then when you have a problem child, because invariably when you're running a long-term enterprise, you're going to have people that come in great, or they de-evolve, or they go in weird directions or whatever. Or let's say you're not just getting the results you want. I mean, for example, in our studios one time, well, we were not producing very many songs. It was just a slow grind. We were taking too long in my professional estimation. And so I changed the comp system. And I said to the chief engineer, here's your new comp system. And he just kind of looked at it and rolled his eyes and quit because he knew he couldn't do that. And then I bring in the next guy, and we have a 400% increase in our music production and our success. I mean, then we started getting Billboard songs and all kinds of critical press, and wow. And that's the change of someone that was mediocre with someone that's stunning. Again, a 400% increase just with the change of a single personality. But the person driven out through the comp system, I didn't even have to fire the person. I just had to say, this is how you're going to get paid. Here's the result we need. And I've done this all over the place. A lot of times you can avoid all the messy and very distasteful conversations and interactions you have with the problem employee, where you can just change the comp system and get the result really you need in a pretty elegant way. But we do use something called an accountability contract, which stipulates that your work and your job position, your duties can change according to the needs of the organization, because that's the way any organism functions. It adapts to the environment. And so we need to build this adaptability into our positions, correct? So thus, a person's compensation system should be able to be changed at any time to serve the interest of the overall whole, that is, the organization. The other thing about the comp system is that it almost immediately knocks slack and complacency out of the organization, because once you get it in, you're driving towards results, towards performance. And this also includes your culture, a happy, healthy culture. We use the word productivity and results like drive, but there's an aspect of this of just the joy of the work atmosphere, correct? But the fact that you're going towards achievement, towards results, yeah, you knock that slack, that complacency out of the organization, because people are moving towards a direction. They're looking for that achievement. And, of course, your comp system does this. And, again, our formula, as I've stated before, is fewer people paid well. It's much better to have fewer highly skilled, talented associates rather than more, I'll say, mediocre people, right? Because your most talented people just can get more done, and they need less management, right? So therefore, the less bodies, the less FTEs that we have, the easier it is to manage. And it's just like that engineer example. You can get X result or 400% more from the same position, but this other person's more talented, and you want a system that just gets rid, in an automatic way, your sub-performers. And the other thing that I just alluded to is that the comp system just makes management easier. It almost puts the organization on autopilot to a large degree, because this is such a structural move. Again, it's like the air or the blood system in an organism. Everyone is wired together. Each area has its own performance, its own results. So everybody's doing their job. It's being measured, and you don't have to even get that anal retentive about that. By the way, is anal retentive hyphenated or not? I'm a CPA and system analyst. Of course, I would ask that question. But management just gets easier because everyone's owning their lives. They're owning their job. They're owning their work. You're getting rid of this world of excuse and blame, even criticalness in the culture. And management is simply easier. The other thing is a lot of organizations suffer from large indirect costs. These are all the supporting departments. This is, again, your IT, your compliance, HR, accounting, finance. And the higher the quality that you drive through the compensation system, the less indirects you need. And you can build redundancy within this, but you just won't need that many people. And thus, you can flatten the organization like a pancake. And if you see almost any MVI system, you'll not see a bunch of regional managers in a large enterprise or anything like that. You'll see really not that much in the middle. You'll see an executive team. That's the little pat of butter on top of the pancake. And then it's flat. There's no manager or anyone to get in the way between the communication between the leadership team, and all of the sites or locations. Because when you introduce regional managers and all this, suddenly they're reinterpreting you, communication gets fuzzy, people get over-communicated, under-communicated, all these things happen. And why not just get rid of it? And if all the site managers, all the locations are doing their job because of the comp system, wiring them together, you have no need for a complete layer or layers in some organization of management. And people wonder why we get these phenomenal economic results. It's based on quality. But the comp system is what drives a great deal of that. You have to have, of course, inspirational leadership, a vision, a turned-on workforce, but it all ends up resulting in quality, which means we're not dealing with screw-ups. For example, quality. We measure quality on an almost unheard of level. That is, for example, the number of service failures or complaints per 1,000 visits. The current record right now is 5,553, beating the former record of 4,222. Think about that. Going 5,553 visits or interactions with patients and families without a single complaint, a single screw-up. Whereas a lot of organizations, well, screw-ups and complaints happen every day. They're routine, right, Andrew? No. So your standards around customer service, customer delight, make your standards outrageous. And you have to hold people to that. Again, your compensation system is a huge part of that. And let me add one more aspect of how the compensation system makes management easier. For example, we deal with clinical managers. This is the person that leads the interdisciplinary team in hospice. Home health, you'll also have various interdisciplinary aspects. But, we're talking about nurses, CNAs, social workers, spiritual care, sometimes different therapists, physician. And for this clinical leader, through the comp system, we can remove, for example, their need to monitor documentation. That is done through the system. And that's a major aspect when you're being paid by insurance or Medicare or any of these payers. You have to have the supporting documentation, and it needs to be done perfectly. Well, our managers also don't have to monitor what? Productivity. Why? Because the system does it. The system informs the employee without any need of the clinical leader to do anything. So they don't even have to monitor productivity. They don't have to do annual evaluations anymore. Yes, they may have JCO or CHAP or different types of accreditations where they insist upon the annual review and all that. But the point is, in the well-designed comp system, people know every day whether they're doing their job to the standards or not. And thus, you can get rid of these annual reviews. If you still have to do them because of some regulation or accrediting body, you can just call them in and say, hey, you're still here. Good job. And let's just keep going. Because they already know where they are. And we can also remove the need for the manager to fire people. It's an unpleasant task, let's face it. And so through the comp system, they're monitoring all these quality elements, productivity, all this. When an employee crosses a certain threshold, they can basically get an email from HR that says, please report to HR and bring your things. And they will handle that. Obviously bringing the manager in if necessary. So there's 4 things eliminated from the normal position of a leader, at least in a healthcare setting. And of course, you can cross that over to your insurance company or your brokerage house or your factory or your store. But there we've knocked out the need for the leader to monitor documentation, monitor productivity, do annual evaluations, or even fire people. We're basically taking so many of the negative aspects of management away so it frees them so they can teach and coach. And that's revolutionary. And that's what makes the MBI model, or at least an aspect of it, just so powerful. Now, in one of the prior messages, we talk about people development because, again, that's another big aspect of Multiview Incorporated. Again, we're system analysts, accountants, and in our early years, that is really where we were. We were, focused obviously on producing great economics and all this, but to really drive change in an organization, it's going to come from the workforce. Again, your true assets and liabilities are walking in the halls. They're not just on the balance sheet. And so understand the realities of human behavior, how to develop human beings, what were the most elite organizations that have ever existed on the planet, as well as the greatest teachers. What could we cull from that to bring into an organized, integrated system for the workforce? And we've divided into 4 different processes. They are your people attraction process, your people selection process, your people development process, and your people retention process. So 4 different processes. And your comp system, of course, impacts every one of those. Your ability to attract people. You want to have the shiny coin out there that attracts people in, and they get in and experience this life-changing electric atmosphere. And to select them, I've already talked about that a little bit, in that when you present this measly salary or this measly base, and that most of your compensation is going to come from your results, your productivity, the comp system comes into play, and then your constant development of that employee by building confidence, by building skills and knowledge into people. And then, of course, you keep people, because how could they go anyplace else with such a fair and rich system that changed their lives? So the comp system really hits all aspects, or all 4 of the processes in a well-designed people system. Now I'd like to add a few additional points before we get into really the comp overview. And you can say, God, Andrew, you've taken some time going through these philosophical explanations. Well, of course, because I don't know exactly what I might say that might impact you. But I know that all these points are valid. Again, the deeper and more profound the understanding of this profound topic we have, the more energy, the more force we have behind it, the less likelihood that these methods will go away over time with turnover and all of the distractions that are in normal business life. So it's worth the time. Okay. Great pay will not make a great worker. Okay, sometimes people have illusional ideas, and part of my job is to blow up all the myths and delusional ideas about compensation here. But no matter how much you pay a poor worker, it will not make the poor worker a good worker. Okay, and this is where people focus just on the carrot, just on the upside. Attaboy, you can do this. And some people just don't have it to give. Again, you cannot give what you do not have. So great pay will not make a great worker. The greatness, the talent must already reside within the person. Another thing is that if you pay a person too much, that is, you overcompensate someone, you damage those people because it's unearned. So they get a false sense of their true value in the world. That is what people will really pay for. And most of the time I found when you overcompensate people, thinking that you're doing a good thing, you're like they're winning the lottery or something that's, quote, free, or we're just being nice, is that they don't even appreciate it. Because they don't understand it. Because they didn't earn it. They didn't know from where this comes from. Not really. And undeserved compensation destroys a company in so many ways, from wasted resources to really demotivating even the motivated. Because if some people are being overcompensated and people see this and are aware of this, and they're going, why? She's not doing that much. He's not very productive. And people know this, but yet they're getting the big salaries. Okay, doesn't sound like a healthy work atmosphere to me. So that should be obvious. I think your point there is pay needs to be earned from achievement. Now let's go through an overview of an intelligently designed compensation system, because we need to have clear thinking of what we're designing, so we need to keep really those goals or aspirations in mind so that they can be incorporated into this structure that we'll be implementing. And there's 4 things that really I focus on. And the first is self-regulation. We want to design a system where people don't have to be lorded over, where they need very little supervision, that they know every day, are they doing their job? Are they doing the standards of the organization? So we want to set up really a system or set up these conditions for success where people can self-regulate. And we'll talk about that. And so much of this has to do with actually establishing very clear standards and understanding what accountability is. And so we want our comp system to have self-regulation. The second point is accountability. We want people to own their lives, to own their work. And we want our comp system to actually do the accountability and administer the rewards as well as the penalties for us. That needs to be a feature of our comp system. And I'll just say this, most organizations where they mess up, this is the big kahuna, because they don't have strong accountability systems. They have weenie systems that are squishy. It's like 3 strikes, you're out. And you end up with these cultures of blame and excuse. Why things don't get done or why the quality isn't a certain way. Because people aren't owning their work. They're not owning their lives. They're not owning their results or performance. And so the higher we can increase accountability, the stronger the organization is going to be, the stronger the individual, and the payoffs just keep going. And we'll talk quite a bit about accountability specifically because really it's probably the component of why organizations are successful or not. But all world-class organizations have incredibly high standards and thus incredibly high accountability. Because when people are slacking, when they're not doing their jobs, they don't last and they get called out quickly. And the third thing is focus on the immediate manager. This is the person that's leading your frontline employees. And when we were winning the Baldrige, again, one of the 2 of the highest quality awards in the world, the Demings Award, of course, and the Baldrige Award, when we were winning that, again, Norman said, we've got to focus on our clinical managers, and that is this frontline position that's leading all the clinicians. We've got to focus on that because I read that 70% of the development, the morale, the retention of frontline staff comes from the relationship of the immediate manager with the immediate supervisor. We need to focus on that. So when you take a look at our org charts and really everything in our system, you'll see this laser beam focus on the immediate manager because they're reproducing themselves all the time. They're giving what they have. They can't give what they don't have. So we have to put the tools, the skill, the knowledge, the talent probably resides within the person, but we can provide development of the skill and knowledge to make these people really rock stars, if we're going to use a musical term. And if you have highly capable people, they're great communicators, they understand directives and all this, and that's part of the MVI's secret sauce. Now, the fourth item in this overview is that you want to create owners and not renters. To my dismay and my experience in humankind, I find that most people are renters, especially in an employment context. They'll walk into buildings, there'll be trash outside, just something that's blown off the road, and they'll just walk right by. Or there could be crumbs in the kitchen or dishes that are not washed, or all kinds of things that the owner of that building or that business are going to notice and say, hey, we need to tidy up here, we need to do a better job. But the owner mentality is not resident in most people. This also explains why the owner works the 100-hour weeks, whereas the employee mindset works 40, or if possible, less than that. Because the owner is thinking about the enterprise, right? What is the future? Am I casting a vision? They're thinking about their people. Do they have the right people in the right positions? What kind of ROI are we getting from all of our deployment of our assets? All those things are being thought about by the owner. And, of course, great advice for anyone listening to this, even if you are not in a leadership position or in an ownership position and you're a frontline employee. If you want to advance, start thinking like an owner. And probably your first thing is to put in the time. Because right there, it's evident that you care about the business, that you're putting really your most important commodity or asset that you have, your very life, you're giving it this company, and that normally will rocket you to a great place. I know I worked so much when I was coming up, and really my whole career, and you could say, well, maybe, Andrew, you like working. Well, it's true. I get a lot of meaning and purpose from my work. But I remember they had meetings because Andrew works so much. He's here on weekends. He's here late at night. He's solving problems. And I was knocking out problems and coming up with solutions right and left. And of course, within just a few years, you end up leading whole divisions, and they keep giving you more departments because of proven success. And that's one of the pitfalls of success and finding successful people, because you tend to load up your talented people with more and more and more because they're so great at getting results. Like at Palm Beach. Okay, I came in as the VP of finance, but then I end up with compliance, medical records, thrift shops. I ended up supervising the inpatient unit. I would run the whole place when the CEO was out. And so my job just kept expanding. But that is kind of the course when you find a very talented person. They're usually talented in many different areas. So again, the overview, what you want to build into your system: self-regulation, accountability, focus on the immediate manager, and you want to create owners rather than renters. And let me just say this, that last point, creating owners rather than renters, that's a difficult task, I found. It is not easy. And that's something that I wrestle with almost continually, trying to find better ways to elevate people's consciousness to where they really care about the organization and the work or the ministry that you're doing, that they put in that extra effort and really think things through, from a much more mature perspective, rather than I'm just putting in my time, I'm just punching the clock and going home and forgetting about everything. Not that there's not a time that everyone does that, because that's healthy. Well, everyone needs a break, needs some rest, of course. But it might be boiled down to where a person just cares enough to be meticulous in that consideration of that business. Now, with these 4 elements designed into the DNA of our comp system, let's go through really how the comp system's developed and how it's implemented. The first is standards. We have to establish the standards of the organization. And usually we recommend only starting out with a handful, maybe even 5. And I'll just say this, the higher quality you go as an organization, the fewer standards you get, believe it or not. The things get simpler because complicated tends to break, whereas the more you can simplify, which takes a lot more brain power to get this great result, the higher the quality goes. So too many standards is not a great thing. And of course, one of your elements has to be your perfect products or your perfect interactions. This would be your perfect phone interactions, however we're engaging with the public. But our visits, in our case, MVI is known for perfect visits with perfect documentations and perfect interactions. And again, we can help people design this. But that really has to be a basis. What are we doing? What are we selling? Is it advice? Is it a product? And what are the standards around that? And then obviously we've got to have our customer interactions contained within those standards. Then we would want to copy and imitate the compensation methods that have proven successful in other organizations. That's where we've got a lot of experience in a lot of different industries, obviously healthcare, but all this work that I did prior to MVI comes into play from factories to country clubs to real retail, obviously brokerage houses, anything that really has customer service. The third point, we want to introduce our proprietary branded compensation system. We like to call it SuperPay, or it could be MegaPay, or it needs to be something that's bold, that stands out, because you basically are going to use this for marketing your organization and attracting talent. You want water cooler talk, right? Well, I hear they're paying like this over here, and it's like $10,000, $20,000 more than we're getting here. And they all tend to be happy. Think I'll go work over there. So really you're designing the name of this system for a marketing result. And the truth is that everything you do in a business is designed for a marketing result. And our marketing materials talk about this. And we've got plenty of materials on how to grow mega organizations marketing-wise. But everything in an organization is designed for a marketing result. Okay, the fourth point. As soon as we identify the actual methods and practices that have proven successful, and this is where normally we're not very open to a lot of ideas. Yes, we solicit input on a certain level, but a lot of times you get very average ideas of unexperienced people where normally we'll say, hey, take our methods, use them, and then after you gain some experience, start to modify them as you see fit, because you're going to be modifying your system almost continually, because your comp system is never a set thing. You're going to adapt to the environment they're in, and so your comp system has to be flexible. But we normally don't recommend tons of modifications to the methods, because normally they tend to go in one direction. Those directions which weaken accountability. Well, I think that's a bit brutal, and I think it needs to be 3 strikes and you're out kind of thing, or, God, everyone's going to quit if we do that. And you get all these weenie and whiny things. They will take all the nutrients out of the system. They're nice people. They want to perceive themselves as nice people. And a lot of people have this connotation of accountability that you're being mean because you're taking away pay from people that aren't doing their job. But what you want to do is strengthen your accountability. And I will say this, when you're setting standards, err on the side of setting them too high, because it's much easier to lessen your standards than to try to raise them later on. Because especially when you tie the comp system, and everyone gets addicted to the comp system like heroin, and suddenly, what? We've got to do more, and, they've purchased a new home and a Jaguar, and so err on the side of setting your standards too high. But avoid any attempt to take the accountability out of these proven methods that work. Okay, once we have our methods, the fourth point is that we work with our key influencers to get buy-in from respected employees, respected clinicians, respected managers. I usually will bring them in one by one. We talk about it. A lot of times I'll say, here's what you're making now, here's what you would be making. And usually it's more, and they go, wow, that would be better. And then you go through your philosophical explanations, but you want to get them sold on the system. Again, this is before the rollout. You're just working with individuals. but they're key influencers. So these need to be your brightest and best. Okay? It does you no good to work with low performers or your problem people, because they're going to be problems anyway. Work with your key people that are respected, because you're going to need their influence. Now, the fifth point, we're going to introduce our SuperPay or our branded comp system to all staff. We're going to elicit comments, because you need to have that feedback. Even though I've told you that basically we'll use the system and the methods that have proven without very much deviation at all, you still want to solicit ideas, because guess what? You're going to get some good ones. You're going to get some things, that's a great point. Let's put that in there. That makes it better. And that's really the multi-view system. We are so open to ideas that if somebody has a great idea, and usually it'll come from this one smart cookie, they'll say, well, what about this? And we go, yeah, we hadn't thought about that. And boom, speed of implementation, and people see that. So solicit comments knowing that you probably won't use a lot of them. And I will say this, normally it's not a huge volume that received, just because people aren't thinking about this. And then, point 6, boom, you implement without delay. And you pilot the compensation system with a winner. That is, you're going to do it at a site where if you flip the switch on your comp system, they would already be winning. And so immediately, that leader and those successful members of that team, because normally if they're a successful leader, they're going to have a successful team, they all are going to be getting the big checks. And everybody in the organization is watching this team. The spotlight is there, and they're going, hands are going up. Could I be a pilot program too? So we always pilot with a winner. And I've been with large mega organizations. I remember it was in Chicago one time. Just immense, thousands and thousands of patients a day. And I was going through this. I started getting the suggestions. Well, let's pilot this in Dallas. They're a small team. Oh, no, let's do it over here in Alabama. They got a dysfunctional team. Or let's do it here. And I said, guys, we're missing the point. You want this thing to be a success, correct? Pilot with your most competent winner, and everyone else will want to get in on the program. And I'm always shocked also at, after we put these systems in, I'll get these calls from these managers that say, Andrew, this changed my life. This has been so wonderful. Or from a CNA or nurse. I remember this one CNA stopped me in the hall and said, Andrew, this has been so great. This is the first time in my life I ever had enough money to take my family to Disney World. Thank you. And that's the kind of response you'll get for the people that get it. Obviously, you're going to have nervous people. Yeah, the people that are not confident, because nervousness comes from lack of confidence. But normally, once they get a few paychecks, they'll be fine. But then you get the people that should be worried. They need to be shaken in their boots. Again, we call these blessed subtractions, because they're not really doing their jobs anyway. They're normally complainers. They don't have the great work ethics. And you definitely don't want to be an organization that tolerates subperformance, because tolerating subperformers kills your culture. It's poison, right? Especially if you're paying, again, traditional salaries. If you're paying, let's say, your clinicians or your employees about the same, and you've got the old-timer that's, again, doing 2 visits, again, the morning and squeezing in the afternoon visit, and then you got the kid out of college that's knocking out 5-6 visits a day, no problem, happy and all that, they're getting paid the same. This disrespect element comes into the mind of the new person, like, why am I busting my can? They start to disrespect the old-timer. Then they start to disrespect the manager for tolerating this subperformance. Then they disrespect the CEO, and then the organization, they quit. You lose your top performers, and that's a sick culture. So, again, pilot with a winner. And then you start running your staff through System 7. This is our proprietary training system that we talk about in people development, where it's impossible for there to be knowledge or skill deficits. It's just impossible for them to exist if you're using such a system. And so we start training everybody in perfect phone interactions, perfect visits, and however that translates, again, to your brokerage firm, to your factory, to whatever service you're doing. Okay, the 8th point is that all employees sign accountability contracts. This is where we set up the conditions for employment, that I'm under no duress or I'm not being coerced into signing this agreement, that I agree to do what the organization asks of me, and that my pay can be changed at any time, and that I understand the standards, and if I'm not clear on the standards, here's what I do, and this is how it's remedied. But they sign this very fair accountability contract, and this is a very important feature of our systems. Keeps you out of legal trouble, too. Point 9. Then we start to work with individual staff, because you may have some people that are keepers, that they're just a little nervous about it, but you can get around to people and say, hey, this is going to work out. Trust me. And if you're a manager, you can work around with your people that are maybe nervous about the system and help them with their confidence and say, hey, if we do a little bit better here, this is what's going to happen. This is going to be great. And you can help these people out. Now, your slackers, your people that are C and D players, they need to be gone anyway. So they need to go work at bottom feeder organization down the road. And then the 10th point is modify and adapt as needed, because you're always going to be working on your comp system. Again, we have to respond to the external world, adapt with it, because life adapts, right? Life changes all the time. And we have to have the intelligence to recognize what's going on in the world, have that true professional perspective, and then adapt our operations to that. And of course, always seeking out best known success patterns. What has worked in other organizations, and use that. Again, not all of our innovations have to be original. Most of them are going to come from other people that have already worked out the solutions to our problems.
We hope you are having the best day of your life. If you need something further, just visit one of the Multiview Incorporated websites or contact us through social media. Smoke signals, carrier pigeons, telepathy have not proven reliable. All calls are answered within 3 rings by a competent, real person. Thank you for listening.